Amid the frozen wilderness of Alaska, Liam, a 50-year-old wildlife photographer, unexpectedly discovers an abandoned bobcat kitten, starving, freezing, and hovering on the edge of death. The fragile gaze of that tiny life compels him to lower his camera for the first time in decades and make a decision that could change both of their
Doing so
destinies.
well.
What made a wild animal place its trust in a human, and what drove a man to break every rule he believed nature demanded? What follows is not merely a rescue, but a journey along the fragile boundary between life, instinct, and compassion. Before we begin this deeply moving true story, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more heartfelt stories from the animal world. An ancient glacier, a photographer's dream, harbored a secret nightmare. Liam, a seasoned wildlife photographer, his 50 years etched with the lines of countless expeditions, arrived in Alaska, his heart set on capturing the majestic glaciers and their resilient inhabitants. Days blurred into a solitary pursuit of the perfect shot, his lens seeking beauty in the unforgiving landscape. He found himself drawn to a remote, rarely visited crevice, a place where the ice groaned with the weight of ages, hoping for a unique perspective, a glimpse of something untouched. The air bit at his exposed skin, a constant reminder of the wild's indifferent power. But Liam, fueled by a lifelong passion, pressed on, his heavy pack a familiar weight against his back. He'd seen so much, documented so much, but even after decades, the raw, untamed heart of nature still held surprises, still held the power to both inspire and humble. The crevice, narrow and winding, promised an angle he hadn't seen before. He edged along its precarious rim, his boots finding purchase on the slick, uneven ice. The silence was profound, broken only by the occasional crack of shifting ice, a sound that resonated deep in his bones. He raised his camera, framing a shot of the towering ice walls, when a flicker of movement, impossibly small, caught his eye. A shape, barely distinguishable from the surrounding rock and debris, stirred at the very edge of a meltwater pool. No bigger than his outstretched hand, his heart, usually steady as a tripod, gave a jolt. It couldn't be. Not here. Not like this. He lowered his camera, his focus shifting, every instinct honed by years in the field now screaming in alarm. As he cautiously approached, the shape resolved into something heartbreakingly familiar, yet so out of place, so utterly vulnerable. A bobcat kitten, a mere wisp of life, lay huddled against a shard of ice, shivering uncontrollably. Its fur, once a vibrant tawny, was matted with ice and grime, its tiny frame shockingly thin, barely a shadow against the vastness of the glacier. Its eyes, cloudy with cold and fear, were barely open, but in that fleeting glance, Liam saw a spark of life, dim but still present. He knew with a certainty that bypassed thought and went straight to the gut, that this was not a moment for photography. This was a moment for rescue. A giant shadow loomed. The air, already so cold it stung, seemed to press down harder. A low rumble, deep and unfamiliar, vibrated through the ground. The small creature, too weak to move, could only push deeper into the cold, trying to disappear. Its body screamed with 1,000 tiny pains, the gnawing emptiness in its belly, the chill that had seeped into every bone, the burning ache in its paws. A new scent, alien and sharp, filled its nostrils, mixing with the metallic tang of the melting ice. Then a touch. Not the comforting nuzzle of its mother, not the rough and tumble of its siblings, but something soft yet firm against its matted fur. Instinct warred with exhaustion. Run. Hide. But there was no strength left, only a profound, dizzying weakness. The world tilted. Up, away from the biting ice, away from the wind that whispered promises of death. There was a moment of terrifying suspension, then a new confinement. A smaller, darker space that smelled of unfamiliar things, but was blessedly, marginally warmer. The cold was still there, a phantom limb, but a faint, almost imperceptible heat began to radiate through its thin fur. The rumbling sound continued, but it was no longer a threat. It was a rhythmic pulse, a low thrum that spoke of motion, of distance. Confusion, thick as the ice on its fur, was slowly giving way to a primal sense of being cradled, albeit awkwardly, by something immense and unfathomable. A new scent, warm and sweet, drifted into its senses, teasing its starved body. It was food it knew, but the effort to even consider it was monumental. The journey felt endless, a jumble of bumps and swaying. Then a new space, brighter, filled with more giants and sharper, more insistent smells. A different kind of touch now, gentle but probing, bringing with it a sudden, sharp sting, a flash of white-hot pain, startling its numb body back to a moment of full awareness, then a wave of drowsy relief. The ache began to recede, replaced by a strange, tingling warmth. A different giant, with softer hands, murmured in low tones. And though the words were meaningless, the sound itself was a balm. A new sensation, liquid, warm, and strangely sweet, trickling past its tongue. Water, clean water. The sensation was exquisite, a taste it hadn't known in what felt like an eternity, washing away the metallic dust of thirst. Then a deeper warmth, enveloping its entire body. A soft, yielding embrace that was almost like its mother's belly, but not quite. It was a blanket, a thick, comforting weight. The giants were still immense, still strange, but the fear was slowly, infinitesimally, giving way to a new tentative feeling. A flicker of something akin to safety. One glance, and the photographer knew this wasn't just another photo op. Liam, at 50, had seen a lifetime of beautiful, brutal, and breathtaking wild moments through his lens. But the scene unfolding before him in the brittle Montana cold was different. The kitten was a skeletal shadow, barely distinguishable from the grimy snow it lay half buried in. Its sparse fur matted with frozen sludge and ice. One eye, a dull glazed green, was swollen shut, the other barely open, a pinprick of fear in a gaunt face. It coughed weakly, a wet, rattling sound, its tiny chest heaving with each shallow, labored breath. Liam's professional detachment, a carefully cultivated shield against the raw emotions of the wild, shattered. This wasn't a picturesque wildlife moment, a testament to nature's resilience. This was a desperate, silent cry for help, raw and urgent. The world was a confusing blur of white and stinging cold. The little bobcat kitten, Bob, knew only the relentless ache in his belly, in the icy grip that squeezed his small lungs. Every movement was an effort, a futile attempt to escape the growing numbness. His mother, a warm, reassuring scent, was gone, replaced by the crushing silence and the indifferent wind. His good eye, blurry with discharge, registered a giant shape, darker than the trees, looming over him. It held a strange, dark object to its face. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through the dull ache. Was this another hunter? Another source of pain? He tried to flatten himself further into the snow, willing himself to disappear, but even that small act was exhausting. Then through the haze of pain and cold, the giant moved closer. A new sensation, a gentle warmth, then a soft, overwhelming texture. A towel? The giant's scent was strange. Not like his mother's, not like the predators he instinctively feared. This one was different. It carried the smell of old paper, a faint metallic tang, and something warm like a fire. He was lifted carefully, but the sudden movement sent a jolt of fresh pain through his small, battered body. He let out a weak, raspy cry, a sound that tore at Liam's heart. The giant's hands were huge, but surprisingly gentle, supporting his fragile frame. He was placed into a dark, enclosed space. It was still cold, but less so. A new fear took hold. Confinement. He thrashed weakly, his tiny claws catching on the soft material beneath him, but his strength quickly failed. The darkness was absolute. He jolted awake, or perhaps just became aware again. The darkness was gone, replaced by a dazzling, blinding light that made his good eye ache. There were new scents, antiseptic, something clean and sharp. and again the giant's comforting, if unfamiliar smell. He was on a soft surface, a towel, but it was moving. His head felt heavy, his body strangely still. A sharp, stinging sensation near his neck. He whimpered, a sound more air than voice. The giant, now visible as two towering figures, spoke in low, rumbling voices. Their hands, large and pale, moved with deliberate slowness. Another giant, this one with the scent of sterile gloves, approached. Its hands were cool against his fur, probing gently, carefully. The fear was still there, a constant companion, but it was dulled by the exhaustion. A new sensation, not pain, but a strange warmth spreading through his limbs, a heavy, drowsy comfort. The stinging near his neck had faded. The giants moved him again, more gently this time, to another soft, warm surface. He felt himself sinking into it. The sounds around him, the rumbling voices, the soft clinking of objects became distant, muffled. He wanted to struggle, to fight the strange lethargy, but the warmth was too inviting, too pervasive. He closed his good eye, letting the darkness claim him. But this time it wasn't the cold, empty darkness of the snow. It was a soft, safe darkness, a temporary reprieve. He felt a faint, insistent hunger, but even that was distant now, overshadowed by the blissful warmth. He woke to a different kind of warmth, not the overwhelming, drowsy kind, but a gentle, consistent heat and a smell. A new, intoxicating smell, unlike anything he'd encountered before. Meat, his stomach, a hollow ache for days, cramped violently. He opened his good eye. The light was softer here, a gentle golden hue. He was still in the enclosed space, but it was bigger, and the soft material beneath him was clean and dry. A small, shallow dish sat before him, filled with a creamy, rich-smelling substance. He tentatively sniffed, his tiny nose twitching. Instinct took over. He lapped hesitantly, then voraciously, the warm, savory liquid a revelation. It tasted like life. The giants were there, not looming, but watching from a distance, their rumbling voices now seeming almost kind. One of them, the giant with the camera, sat quietly, his eyes, soft and curious, fixed on Bob. And then, through the haze of hunger and fear, the kitten's desperate, half-blinded gaze locked onto Liam, a haunting, silent plea that pierced through his camera lens and into his soul. A small, tentative spark of something new ignited within the tiny bobcat, a flicker of hope. Nature's indifference met a human's unwavering resolve. The biting wind howled its ancient song, indifferent to the small, shivering creature huddled beneath a sparse pine. The air itself seemed to flay skin from bone, and the small bobcat kitten, no bigger than Liam's outstretched hand, pulsed with a desperate, shallow breath. Liam, a man carved from the mountains he photographed, watched through the lens of his camera, his heart a raw knot in his chest. Every instinct, every learned lesson about the wild, screamed at him to let nature take its course. But the kitten's eyes, unfocused and clouded with approaching death, pierced through his professional detachment. He knew with a certainty that chilled him more than the frigid air, that this tiny life wouldn't survive another night. The internal battle was brief but brutal. To intervene was to cross a line, to tamper with the delicate balance, but to walk away was to condemn. Liam lowered his camera, the metallic click echoing in the vast silence. He stripped off his thick gloves. The raw cold, a shock to his skin, and approached. The kitten, too weak to flee, merely quivered, a tiny bundle of fear and frost. He knelt slowly, deliberately, his movements gentle, almost reverent, with hands calloused from years of gripping camera gear and climbing rock faces. He carefully scooped up the fragile creature. Its tiny body barely weighed anything, a feather-light collection of bones and matted fur. The fear radiating from it was palpable, a frantic thrum against his palms. Liam murmured soft, unintelligible words, a steady stream of sound intended to soothe, even if the kitten couldn't understand. The journey back to his remote cabin was a desperate race against time and the elements. The freezing winds whipped around him, tearing at his parka, and the treacherous terrain made slick by patches of ice, demanded every ounce of his concentration. He held the kitten close to his chest, its tiny warmth a faint ember against the growing cold. Each step was a prayer, each gust of wind a challenge to his resolve. The bobcat kitten, a jumble of instincts and raw terror, felt itself lifted. A massive, warm wall of something soft but firm enveloped it. The world tilted, spun, then settled into a rhythmic, jostling motion. The cold that had been slowly consuming it eased, replaced by a strange new warmth. The scent of pine and something distinctly human, an unfamiliar but not immediately threatening odor, filled its tiny nostrils. Its small heart hammered against its ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear. This was not the familiar scent of its mother, nor the sharp tang of a fallen branch. This was different. Inside the cabin, a blast of blessed warmth hit them. Liam wasted no time. He moved with a practiced efficiency, setting the kitten gently down on a soft old blanket near the roaring wood stove. The kitten immediately tried to burrow into the folds, its body still trembling, but the tremor was now less from cold and more from sheer terror. Liam spoke in low, soothing tones, his voice a rumbling sound that the kitten's instincts registered as non-threatening. He observed its labored breathing, its dull eyes, the faint but disturbing rasp in its tiny lungs. Then came the giants. 2 more of them. These ones smelled different, sharper, with an unsettling hint of something sterile. The kitten instinctively tried to cower deeper into the blanket. One giant, a woman with a gentle voice, reached out. A sharp, brief sting on its tiny flank, followed by an immediate rush of warmth, a spreading calm that blurred the edges of its fear. The sting was unpleasant, but the aftermath was relief. Its muscles, rigid with tension, began to loosen. Water appeared, not a puddle in a hollowed-out stone, but a shallow, gleaming dish. It smelled clean, pure, not like the muddy puddles it had sometimes found. Hesitantly, it lapped. The cool, clear liquid was a revelation, quenching a thirst it hadn't realized had become a burning agony. The taste was a memory, a forgotten pleasure. Food followed, a soft, mushy substance that smelled rich and good. It ate slowly at first, then with increasing urgency, the emptiness in its belly protesting. Liam watched in, a silent sentinel, as the vet administered the first round of antibiotics, a tiny dose that would begin to fight the pneumonia ravaging the kitten's lungs. He felt the weight of his decision settle deep in his bones. This wasn't just a rescue, it was a commitment, a profound responsibility. He had plucked a creature from the jaws of death, and now he had to guide it back to life. He gently wrapped the kitten in his emergency blanket, a soft fleece barrier against the cold. The tiny purr that vibrated against his chest was barely audible, a faint tremor, but it was there, a spark, a promise. Days bled into a hazy, comforting routine. The giant with the rumbling voice was always there, a constant, reassuring presence. Its scent, once strange, now became a balm. The giant's hands, so enormous, were incredibly gentle, stroking its head, cleaning its fur. The stingy needle came and went, but each time the feeling of ease and growing strength followed. The rasp in its lungs lessened, its breathing became smoother, deeper. The pain that had been a dull ache beneath its fur receded, replaced by a growing awareness of its body, of its paws, its tail. The world outside the blanket began to expand. A small, soft bed, the warmth of the fire, the rhythmic click of a large machine that the giant would peer into, then hum softly to itself. It still tensed at sudden movements, at loud noises, its wild instincts screaming caution, but a new, powerful instinct was beginning to take root. Trust. It curled tighter into the soft blanket, its tiny purr a constant growing presence. It was safe. For now, it was safe. Far from the familiar whir of a camera, Liam, a man of 50 whose hands usually sculpted light and shadow, found himself in a role he'd never anticipated, an emergency medic. The tiny, still shivering form of the bobcat kitten lay swaddled in an old fleece, its erratic breathing a frantic rhythm against the quiet hum of his cabin. The world was a confusing blur of smells and textures. The overwhelming, acrid scent of fear had given way to something new, A strange, warm, yet sterile odor, a giant with hands bigger than the kitten's entire body, had scooped it from the terrifying vastness of the outside world, from the burning pain in its side and the stinging grit in its eye. Now the giant's touch was different, no longer the rough snatch of a predator, but a tentative, surprisingly gentle pressure. It was unnerving, yet there was a deep, primal instinct that whispered, "Safe." The giant, Liam, moved with a clumsy carefulness, his brow furrowed in concentration. The Bobcat kitten felt the soft, damp swipe of something cool across its wounds, a curious stinging followed by a soothing warmth. A low, guttural murmur, surprisingly soft, emanated from the giant's chest as he worked, a sound that resonated deep within the kitten's tiny frame. The infected eye, a source of constant, throbbing agony, was gently bathed with a saline solution. It stung, making the kitten flinch. But then the burning receded, replaced by a cool, clean sensation. The crusty film began to dissolve, and a sliver of sight, however blurry, returned to the previously dark world. A new bed was fashioned, soft and yielding, a haven of warmth. It smelled of the giant, a scent that was no longer frightening, but held a strange, comforting familiarity. Liam watched, his heart a raw knot in his chest, as the kitten, nestled in the makeshift den, remained unresponsive, its breathing still shallow and ragged. He tried to offer a diluted milk formula, spoonful by painstaking spoonful. The metallic tang of the spoon against its gums was strange, unfamiliar, but the liquid was cool and slightly sweet, a stark contrast to the parched, burning dryness in its throat. A few drops trickled down, but most ran out, the kitten too weak, too fearful to truly accept it. The fear was still a dull ache, but the overwhelming terror that had gripped it in the vast cold world outside was slowly, almost imperceptibly, being replaced by a fragile sense of uneasy sanctuary. Then a sudden, terrifying jolt. The world spun. Pain, sharp and electric, shot through its tiny body. Its muscles seized, twitching, pulling, contorting in ways that felt alien and horrifying. Its legs thrashed uncontrollably, claws extended and retracted in a wild, unthinking dance. A guttural cry, not its own, but a strangled gasp of pure agony, tore from its throat. The giant Liam was suddenly there, a looming shadow of panic. His hands, though gentle, were firm, pinning its flailing body, murmuring soothing, urgent sounds that made no sense but carried a desperate plea. The world narrowed to a tunnel of blinding light and crushing pressure, every nerve ending screaming. Liam, terrified, his mind racing through wilderness first aid protocols he'd learned for human companions, not wild animals, used his knowledge to stabilize the convulsing creature, fearing the worst, feeling utterly helpless against the brutal forces gripping the small body. Slowly, agonizingly, the electrical storm within its body began to subside. The world, still spinning, gradually slowed to a dizzying halt. The pain receded, leaving behind a profound exhaustion, a weariness so deep it felt like its very essence was being pulled into the earth. The giant's hands were still there, no longer pressing, but cradling. The low, murmuring sounds continued, now softer, laced with relief and a lingering fear. The warmth of the makeshift bed enveloped it once more, a comforting darkness. The smell of the giant, of warm fabric, and something vaguely metallic now intertwined with a new scent, a faint, sweet, yet medicinal aroma. The terror of the seizure left a deep imprint, a memory of absolute vulnerability, but also a new awareness of the giant's unwavering presence, a strange anchor in a chaotic world. Every breath was a victory, every heartbeat a prayer. My small body, once a vibrant engine of instinct and hunt, was now a fragile vessel. The cold, the pain, the gnawing emptiness, they were a familiar, suffocating blanket that had covered my world for too long. Now there were new sensations, the soft warmth beneath me, the peculiar scent of the giant who watched over me, and the insistent alien feeling of sustenance being gently pushed past my lips. My purrs, faint at first, were like tiny, desperate vibrations against the vast silence of my suffering. My one good eye, a sliver of cloudy green, would sometimes flicker open, catching glimpses of the blurry, immense face that bent over me. Fear still coiled in my gut, a primal echo of past terrors, but a new confusing comfort was slowly, painstakingly woven into its threads. The giants, these enormous, soft-voiced creatures, initially terrified me. Their sheer size, their unfamiliar smells, the way they moved so quickly and unpredictably, in my instincts screamed danger. But the danger never came. Instead, there was the gentle pressure of fingers against my jaw, coaxing tiny drops of liquid down my throat. There was the sting of a needle, brief and sharp, followed by a strange, tingling warmth spreading through my limbs, easing the persistent ache. I would flinch, hiss weakly, my tiny claws batting at the air. But the giant never retaliated. Only patience, endless patience, a deep rumble in his chest that wasn't a growl but something else, something soothing. Days blurred into a cycle of feeding, warmth, and the rhythmic sound of the giant's breathing. My body, once a prison of pain, began to feel different, lighter. The purrs, at first so weak they were almost imperceptible, now vibrated through my small frame with more conviction. I could feel the energy returning, a faint spark in the embers. The taste of the food, at first an unwelcome intrusion, became something I anticipated, something that quelled the deep, hollow ache in my belly. My muscles, atrophied and stiff, started to respond, allowing me to shift my weight, to stretch a little, though the effort was still immense. The world was still a fuzzy, confusing place. But the overwhelming sense of terror began to recede, replaced by a cautious curiosity. Then came the darkness again, a different kind of darkness. Not the familiar cold of starvation, but a suffocating weight in my chest. Each breath became a battle, a raspy, desperate gasp that shook my entire body. A strange, rattling sound echoed within me. A sound I didn't recognize, but that filled me with a primal dread. The warmth, which had become my anchor, now felt like a heavy, oppressive blanket. The giant's face, usually a blur of gentle concern, was now etched with a new urgent fear. His hands, usually so soft, now pressed and prodded at my tiny chest, sending sharp jolts of discomfort through my weakening body. I cried out, a thin, desperate sound that was barely audible. My purrs ceased. The world narrowed to the agony of each failing breath. I felt the giant's touch again, firm but hesitant. Another sting, sharper than before, deep into my flank. I hissed, my body tensing, remembering the old pain, the betrayal. Was this the end of the fragile comfort? Was the monster finally revealing its true nature? But as the pain subsided, a new sensation began to spread. Not warmth this time, but a strange, subtle opening, a slight easing of the suffocating pressure in my chest. Each gasp, though still agonizing, felt less utterly hopeless. The strange rattling sounds, though still present, seemed to recede, replaced by a faint, new rhythm that was almost a breath. The giant watched, his face a mask of profound worry, but in his eyes I saw not malice, but a desperate plea. And as my raw, aching lungs fought for air, a sliver of that confusing, fragile trust began to reemerge, clinging to the faint hope that this giant, who had brought me from the brink before, might just do it again. The large two-legged creature, Liam, was a blur of soft sounds and even softer touches. At first, all was chaos, the terrifying squeeze of a net, the jolt of being lifted into a box that smelled of fear and old metal. Shadow, the bobcat, remembered a sharp burning sensation in its eye, a constant throb that made the world a murky, painful place. The giant hand that had first snatched him was now strangely gentle, but the fear was a raw, primal thing, clinging to him like burrs. Every rustle, every murmur, every sudden shadow sent a jolt through his already bruised body. He was a creature of the wild, and this new world was all wrong, a cage made of invisible walls. Days bled into each other, marked by the rhythmic clinking of bowls and the rhythmic whisper of the giant's voice. The pain in his eye, once a constant inferno, slowly dimmed to a dull ache. The giant's hands, though huge, were surprisingly deft, applying cool, wet things to his face that soothed the fire. Food, bland but nourishing, appeared as if by magic, in water clean and cool, quenched a thirst that had gnawed at him for what felt like an eternity. He learned to differentiate between the quick, unsettling movements and the slow, deliberate ones that brought relief. The sharp sting of a needle was always followed by a rush of warmth, an easing of the incessant throbbing that had been his only companion for so long. He began to associate the giant with the cessation of pain, a strange, confusing connection for a creature whose instincts screamed danger. He was still weak, the unfamiliar softness of the bedding a strange contrast to the hard, cold ground he was used to. His muscles, once taut and ready for flight, ached with disuse. But the fear, though still present, was no longer a suffocating blanket. It had thinned, allowing glimpses of curiosity to peek through. He watched the giant, Liam, as he moved about the room, his voice a low rumble, never sharp. He even began to anticipate the gentle touch, the soft stroke along his spine that sent a strange warmth through him, a sensation he hadn't known existed. It was a perilous dance between the deep-seated instinct to flee and the burgeoning comfort of consistent, non-threatening interaction. One evening, as the room settled into the quiet hum of twilight, Liam sat beside his crate. His hand, so large and imposing, was resting gently on the wire. Shadow, still wary, had been watching him. Liam began to speak in that low, comforting voice, and then his hand, hesitant but firm, reached through the wire and began to stroke the soft fur behind his ears. A place he hadn't known could feel so good. A shiver went through him, not of fear, but of something new, something almost pleasant. He stiffened, ready to bolt, but the touch was too gentle, too consistent. He found himself leaning into it just a fraction, then an instinct he couldn't explain, a whisper of trust from somewhere deep within guided him. He pushed his head into the giant's palm, a soft, tentative nuzzle. It was a tiny gesture, a silent plea for more, and for the giant, he saw a wetness in his own large eyes. Later, as Liam prepared for bed, Shadow watched from his open crate, a newfound boldness replacing the constant dread. He saw the giant remove his spectacles, placing them on a small table. Something shiny, glinting under the dim light, fell from Liam's pocket onto the bed. It was a small, round, metal piece, reflecting the room's muted glow. Liam turned his back for a moment, and an urge, playful and irresistible, seized Shadow. He crept silently from his crate, a shadow himself in the low light. With a swift, almost silent movement, he snatched the tiny, glittering object, the cool metal a surprising weight in his mouth. He carried it to Liam's pillow, nudging it deep beneath the soft fabric. An offering, a game, a secret shared. He retreated to his crate, a strange new warmth spreading through him. The world was still confusing, but perhaps, just perhaps, this giant wasn't so bad after all. The air tasted different here, sharper, cleaner, but still laced with unfamiliar scents that prickled Shadow's nose. The rhythmic hum of the strange metal box he'd been confined in had finally ceased, replaced by a symphony of unfamiliar sounds. Distant barks, the soft clinking of instruments, and the low murmurs of giants. Every jostle sent a jolt of discomfort through his chest, a dull ache that had become a constant companion. Fear, a cold, hard knot in his belly, tightened with each new sensation, each unfamiliar face peering down at him through the bars of his carrier. He remembered the old fear, the sharp pain, the hunger that gnawed, and this new fear, though less immediate, was a deep, unsettling tremor. Then came the new giants. One, a soft-voiced presence that smelled faintly of antiseptic and something sweet, gently opened the carrier door. Shadow flinched, instinctively flattening himself against the hard plastic, a low growl rumbling in his throat, a sound more of fear than defiance. But this giant moved slowly, deliberately, a warm, thick blanket unfurling before him, inviting him out. He hesitated, his wild instincts screaming danger, but the persistent ache in his chest, the weariness that clung to him, whispered of warmth, of rest. Slowly, cautiously, he crept out, his paws padding silently onto the soft fabric. It was a strange comfort, this soft square, a stark contrast to the cold, unforgiving ground he'd known for so long. The giant, who they called Dr. Evelyn Reed, was a calm presence. Her hands, though large, were surprisingly gentle. They moved over his body, a strange exploration that began with a cold, round disc pressed against his chest. Each touch sent a ripple of unease, but not pain. Instead, a peculiar sensation, like a dull vibration, followed the cold disc. He didn't understand what she was doing, only that her touch was different from the rough handling he'd endured before. He didn't fight, too weary, too guarded. He simply endured, his senses on high alert, trying to decipher the intent behind these odd rituals. His body, once a vibrant engine of survival, felt heavy, unresponsive. The memories of hunger, of the sharp bite of cold, were still fresh. But here, there was a strange warmth, a quiet hum of care that slowly began to chip away at the hard shell of his fear. Then came the prick, a sharp momentary sting in his flank, followed by a rush of warmth, a fuzzy sensation that spread through his limbs. He blinked slowly, his eyelids heavy. The giant, Liam, the one who smelled of old paper and quiet determination, was there too, a steady, comforting presence, even as his own giant hands shook slightly. Shadow felt the overwhelming urge to curl into himself, to sleep, to forget the persistent throb in his chest. He tasted water, clean and cool, offered gently from a bowl, and then a small, bland morsel of something soft that slipped down his throat easily. It wasn't the thrill of a fresh kill, but it was sustenance, a gentle push against the emptiness. He was tired, so very tired, and the world began to soften at the edges. When he woke, the giants were still there, their voices hushed, laden with a strange, heavy quiet. He heard words like defect and surgery and risky. He didn't understand the meaning, but the tone, the worry in Liam's voice vibrated through him. He looked at Liam, then at Dr. Reed, their faces etched with a profound sadness. Shadow knew sadness. He'd lived with it, breathed it, for too long. He felt a different kind of ache now, not just in his body, but a strange resonance with the giant's unspoken pain. He was a wild creature, driven by instinct. But these giants, in their clumsy, insistent way, had offered him something new: safety, a fleeting comfort, a gentle hand. The thought of losing it, of returning to the cold emptiness, sent a shiver through him that had nothing to do with the cool air. He pressed his head against the soft blanket, a silent plea for the comfort to remain, for the warmth to stay. Scalpel's edge, a whisper of life, a breath held taut, where fate balanced on the thinnest, most terrifying wire. Liam, his heart a raw, exposed nerve, couldn't abandon Shadow. Not after everything. The Bobcat kitten, a creature of fierce, untamed spirit, had burrowed into a place in him he hadn't known was empty. He'd authorized the surgery, signing the forms with a hand that trembled, the ink bleeding slightly on the page as if mirroring the ache in his chest. The operation was an eternity. Dr. Reed, her face a mask of intense concentration, worked with a silent grace that spoke of years of practice, her team moving around her like a well-oiled machine. A shadow, so tiny, so fragile, lay on the gleaming metal table. An island of vulnerability in a sea of focused expertise. Liam paced the waiting room, each minute an hour, each tick of the clock a hammer blow against his ribs. He gripped his hands, knuckles white, praying for a miracle for the once feral creature who had, against all odds, become his anchor. The emotional toll was immense, a heavy blanket of dread and hope that suffocated and sustained him in equal measure. He pictured Shadow's wary, intelligent eyes, the way the kitten would twitch an ear at his voice, the cautious, almost imperceptible brush of fur against his leg. This wasn't just about saving an animal. It was about saving a piece of himself he hadn't known he'd lost. Shadow felt strange. The world had gone from big and scary, full of jarring noises and looming shadows, to a confusing blankness. There had been a sharp prick, a sudden heavy lethargy washing over her, pulling her down into a deep, dark pool. It wasn't the deep sleep of hunger or exhaustion she'd known in the wild, but something deeper, thicker, like being submerged in treacle. Her body, which had been a constant thrum of pain and weakness, now felt nothing at all. This lack of sensation was, in its own way, terrifying. Before, every ache had been a reminder she was still alive, still fighting. Now there was just absence, a void. She heard muffled voices, like the buzz of distant insects, and felt faint vibrations that resonated in her bones. But her eyes wouldn't open. Her limbs wouldn't respond. It was the most profound helplessness she'd ever known. Worse than when her mother disappeared, worse than the biting cold and empty belly. Then at least she could try to move, to hunt, to find shelter. Now she was simply there. A sudden, jarring sensation ripped through the void. A jolt, like being struck by lightning, followed by a frantic flurry of hands. A rising urgency in the distant voices. Shadow's body, which had been still and unresponsive, twitched, a tiny involuntary spasm. The dark pool she was in began to roil, to churn. She felt a strange, cold emptiness in her chest, a profound stillness where there should have been a rhythm. It was a terrifying absence, a void within a void. Panic, deep and primal, tried to surface, but her body was too heavy, too numb to respond. The hands, those giant, careful hands, were now moving faster, pressing, prodding. There was a desperate, high-pitched beeping sound, a frantic rhythm that echoed the growing fear inside her. The giant voices were sharper now, closer, filled with a tension that seeped into her dreamlike state. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. She was falling into an even deeper, colder chasm. Then another jolt, stronger this time. A rush of air, cold and sharp, into her lungs, and then a flutter. A tiny, almost imperceptible beat deep within her chest. It was weak, hesitant, but it was there. A fragile, desperate rhythm re-emerging from the brink. The high-pitched beeping changed, becoming erratic, then slowly, miraculously, more regular. The hands were still there, still working, but the frantic energy began to subside, replaced by a renewed, albeit shaken, determination. Shadow felt a warmth spread through her, a tingling sensation as if life itself was flowing back into her numb limbs. The cold emptiness in her chest receded, replaced by that faint, precious thrumming. She was back, barely, teetering on the very edge of that dark chasm, but she was back. The giants had pulled her away from the edge. Hours later, the world slowly began to trickle back in. A dull ache in her chest, a phantom memory of the giant hands pressing. The scent of antiseptic, sharp and clean, mixed with the faint, comforting smell of the big giant, Liam. She felt a warm, soft blanket around her, cocooning her in a way she hadn't felt since she was a tiny, sightless newborn, snuggled against her mother's belly. Her eyes fluttered open, heavy and unfocused. Shapes swam into view, the blur of a metal cage, the soft glow of a distant light. Then a face, the big giant, Liam. His face was drawn, etched with exhaustion, but his eyes, usually so wary and distant, were filled with a profound relief that made her own tiny heart clench in a strange, new way. He didn't come too close, didn't make sudden movements. He just sat there watching her, a silent vigil. It was different from the harshness of her past, the sharp bites of hunger, the constant fear of bigger, stronger things. This was gentle. This was safe. And slowly, cautiously, a fragile seed of trust began to sprout in the fertile ground of her bruised, healing heart. A dull ache throbbed where the deep cut had been, a phantom memory of terror. Shadow, the Bobcat, didn't understand why the big, soft, paw-like things had held him down, or why the strange, sweet smell had made his head spin. But when he woke, the agonizing fire in his side was gone, replaced by a dull, persistent thrum. His body felt lighter, though still heavy with weakness. He blinked. The unfamiliar sterile white of the enclosure, a stark contrast to the damp, shadowed den he'd known. Fear still coiled in his gut, a leftover instinct from a life of constant threat. But it was muted, softened by an unexpected warmth beneath him, a thick, soft blanket. A giant appeared, smelling of something clean and comforting, like soft wood and old cloth. It moved slowly, its voice a low rumble that didn't threaten. A dish appeared, smelling of rich, savory meat. Shadow's instincts screamed caution, but hunger, a ravenous beast within, overruled. He tentatively licked the offering, the taste a revelation after days, weeks even, of gnawing emptiness. Each bite was a small victory, a tiny tremor of strength returning to his weakened frame. The giant watched, silent, unmoving, its presence a quiet anchor in his new, confusing world. The days blurred into a gentle rhythm of food, sleep, and the slow, arduous process of regaining his strength. The sting of needles was followed by the warmth of a blanket. The cold fear of strange hands was replaced by the gentle touch of a giant finger stroking his fur. A touch that no longer brought panic, but a strange, foreign sense of comfort. He learned to trust the soft murmur of their voices, the rhythmic tapping of their footsteps. His wobbly step soon became confident strides, his once fragile body gaining muscle and resilience. The emptiness in his belly was consistently filled, and the burning thirst a distant, unpleasant memory. He began to explore the confines of his enclosure, batting at soft toys, the primal joy of play reawakening. Then Liam came. He was the giant from the very beginning, the one whose scent had been the first to cut through the fog of pain and fear. Shadow, now stronger, with senses fully alert, recognized it instantly. A deep, instinctual purr rumbled in his chest, a sound he hadn't known he could make. Liam's voice, a familiar low growl, was like a balm, soothing the last vestiges of fear. When Liam knelt by the enclosure, his eyes crinkling in a way that didn't feel threatening, a profound, almost human-like joy surged through Shadow. He rubbed his head against the wire, purring louder, a wild creature offering a glimpse of its deepest trust. It was a bond forged in shared trauma and triumph, a silent conversation between a man and a bobcat, both understanding the journey from the brink. He didn't know why this specific giant felt different. Perhaps it was the way his scent lingered on the soft blankets, or the way his voice, though deep, never held an edge of threat. Other giants came and went, offering food and cleaning, but Liam's presence was a different kind of warmth. When he arrived, the air itself seemed to lighten. Shadow would pace with anticipation, his tail twitching, until the giant's familiar form appeared. Liam would speak to him in soft tones. Words Shadow didn't comprehend, but understood the intent behind. Sometimes Liam would just sit, reading a book, his quiet presence a comforting anchor. Shadow would often curl up near the side of the enclosure closest to him, feeling safe in a way he hadn't known was possible. The outside world, the harsh struggle for survival, felt impossibly distant, a nightmare receding with each passing day. Here, there was only warmth, safety, and the steady, comforting presence of the man who had pulled him from the abyss. The rehabilitation team, often observed by Liam, meticulously recorded every step of Shadow's progress. They spoke of release criteria and rewilding, concepts alien to Shadow but understood as the giant's way of ensuring his full recovery. He'd watch them, these benevolent giants, from the safety of his growing strength, no longer cowering but with a keen, intelligent curiosity. The memory of the trap, the hunger, the searing pain, it was still there, a ghost in the periphery, but it no longer defined him. He was Shadow, the bobcat who had stared death in the face and found a new lease on life, guided by the unlikely compassion of a human. And Liam, the quiet giant, had been the first bridge to that new world. Love means letting go, even when it breaks your heart. Liam, his 50 years etched with the lines of a life lived behind a lens, knew this truth in his bones. He knew it from the times he'd packed up his gear and left distant landscapes, from the bittersweet goodbyes to the faces that had filled his frames. But knowing it in theory and living it when the subject was Shadow the Bobcat, a creature whose very existence had become intertwined with his own, were two entirely different things. As Shadow the Bobcat continued to thrive, its initial fear of the giant human forms slowly replaced by a hesitant, then eager acceptance of their presence. Liam found himself wrestling with another painful decision. The Bobcat, once a huddled ball of raw nerves and matted fur, now moved with a nascent confidence, its lithe body gaining muscle, its cloudy eyes clearing to a piercing gold. Liam spent long nights staring at the dark ceiling, the Bobcat's soft purr from its spacious enclosure, a counterpoint to the turmoil in his mind. He knew, with a certainty that felt like a physical ache, that a wild bobcat, even a rehabilitated one, belonged in its natural habitat. The scent of pine, the rustle of leaves underfoot, the thrill of the hunt, these were Shadow's birthright. But fear, a cold, sharp claw, gripped his heart. Would Shadow, who now tolerated human touch and accepted food from Liam's hand, truly be able to survive the brutal realities of the wilderness? The bobcat had been found injured, helpless, a victim of circumstance. What if he released it only for it to suffer again? The ethical implications of both choices spun a tangled web around him. To keep Shadow the bobcat, to give it a life of comfort and safety, felt like a betrayal of its wild spirit, a denial of its true nature. Yet to release it, knowing the dangers, felt like throwing a child into a raging river. He'd watched Shadow grow, observed its every twitch and flick of an ear, learned the subtle language of its needs, the memory of its terror when first brought in, the way it had pressed itself against the cold metal of the cage. The guttural snarls of pure fear still haunted him. The sting of the initial dart, a sharp, momentary pain, had given way to the deep, comforting warmth of a blanket in the careful, gentle hands of the vets. The taste of clean, cool water, offered in a shallow dish after days of thirst, had been a revelation, and the soft, mushy food, then the raw meat, had brought strength back to its weakening limbs. Now its fur was sleek, its movements fluid, its eyes bright with intelligence, and dare he hope, a flicker of trust when they met his own. The decision weighed heavily, a constant, dull throb behind his ribs. He consulted with the wildlife experts, listened to their experienced opinions, each one a pragmatic reminder of the bobcat's wild nature. They spoke of conditioning, of minimizing human interaction as much as possible, of preparing Shadow for the harsh realities of self-sufficiency. Liam nodded, agreed, but his heart argued silently, fiercely against the logic. He remembered the small, almost imperceptible nuzzle Shadow the bobcat had once offered against his gloved hand, a fleeting moment of connection that felt profound. One afternoon, during a supervised outdoor session in a larger, pre-release enclosure designed to mimic its natural habitat, the world tilted. Liam had been observing Shadow the bobcat through his camera lens, enjoying the sight of the animal stalking a hidden toy, its instincts sharp and honed. The enclosure was vast, designed with various levels and dense foliage, a perfect testing ground for a creature about to reclaim his freedom. Shadow, its muscular body a blur of reddish-brown and black, was moving with a new kind of power, a predatory grace that sent a shiver down Liam's spine, a mix of pride and dread. He was momentarily distracted by a text message, a brief flicker of his attention away from the bobcat. When he looked up, Shadow the bobcat was gone. A cold dread, sharp and sudden, speared through Liam. He dropped the camera, the sound echoing in the sudden, terrifying silence. "Shadow," he called, his voice rough. No response. Panic, hot and sickening, flooded him. He scanned the dense foliage, his heart hammering against his ribs. The enclosure was designed to be secure, but a wild animal, especially one regaining its strength, could find weaknesses. He called out again, louder this time, his voice laced with the terror of immediate loss. Every rustle of leaves, every shadow seemed to mock him. Had it found a way out? Was it already gone, lost to the dangers of the world outside the sanctuary? The thought was unbearable. Had all their efforts, all their care, been for naught? He imagined Shadow, disoriented and vulnerable, encountering a road, a hostile human, another predator. The images flashed through his mind, each one a fresh stab of fear. The world from Shadow's perspective would have been a confusing maze of smells and sounds. The initial feeling of liberation, of boundless space, would have quickly given way to the unfamiliarity, the lurking threats, the sudden, overwhelming instinct to find cover. His calls became more frantic, his search more desperate. He scrambled through the undergrowth, branches clawing at his clothes, his mind racing. It was only minutes, perhaps barely 5, but it felt like an eternity. Then a rustle nearby, a subtle shift in the shadows. From behind a thick cluster of bushes, Shadow the bobcat emerged, its tail held high, a small, dead mouse clutched proudly in its jaws. It regarded Liam with wide, unblinking golden eyes, a faint, almost imperceptible purr rumbling in its chest. The bobcat had not escaped. It had simply been hunting, its instincts roaring to life in the simulated wilderness. The immediate relief that washed over Liam was so profound, it left him weak-kneed. He sank to the ground, taking deep, shuddering breaths. But the incident, brief and ultimately harmless as it was, had forced him to confront a stark reality. Shadow the bobcat, despite its bond with him, despite the comfort and safety he had provided, was still a wild animal. That fleeting moment of panic, that terror of loss, served as a brutal reminder. Shadow needed to be prepared for the wilderness, not coddled in a human's shadow. The decision, though heartbreaking, was becoming clearer. Love sometimes meant letting go. Even when it broke his heart, it meant trusting the wild heart of the bobcat and trusting that the work they had done, the rehabilitation and the careful rebuilding of trust, had been enough. Not the wild, but a haven. Not alone, but loved. The air still carried the faint, lingering scent of pine and damp earth, a ghost of the untamed forests Shadow once knew. But here, within the vast, sun-dappled enclosures of the sanctuary, there was a different kind of freedom. It wasn't the breathless, desperate fight for survival, but a gentle, expansive space where the echoes of past terrors could finally recede. Liam, after countless quiet consultations with Dr. Reed, after weighing every twitch of Shadow's ears, every shift in its eyes, knew in his heart that a full return to the wild was a gamble too cruel to take. Shadow's broken leg, the long, arduous recovery, the whispers of an early, unknown trauma. These weren't just medical notes, they were scars etched deep, changing the very essence of what Shadow could endure. This sanctuary, with its sprawling acres of native vegetation, its hidden dens and flowing streams, was the compromise, a bridge between two worlds. It was a place where Shadow could be a bobcat, truly yet always within the protective embrace of knowing hands, always with the certainty of a full belly and a safe den. The journey itself had been a kaleidoscope of sensations for Shadow. And the gentle jostle of the vehicle, a different rhythm than the predator's silent stalk. The strange shifting light through the slotted sides of the crate, sometimes a blinding white, sometimes a soothing blur of green and brown. A primal fear, deep in its bones, sparked and flared, reminding it of past captures, of rough hands and sharp pains. But this time, there was a difference. The air, though confined, didn't carry the metallic tang of fear from other trapped creatures. It smelled of Liam, of the familiar comforting scent that had come to mean warmth and food and safety. A low purr, almost imperceptible, rumbled in its chest, a strange counterpoint to the thrumming anxiety. This human giant, who had once been a terrifying shadow looming over its injured form, was now a constant, reassuring presence. When the crate finally stopped moving and the latch clicked open, a flood of new scents assaulted Shadow's senses. Dirt, fresh and alive, the sharp tang of pine needles, the sweet, damp earth after a recent rain. This wasn't the enclosed, woodsy scent of Liam's small den, but a vast, sprawling tapestry of smells that spoke of wildness, yet without the immediate, urgent threat. Liam's hand, large and gentle, nudged its side. It hesitated, one paw tentatively reaching out, feeling the cool, soft earth beneath its pads. The air here was different, too. Not the recycled air of the house, but a living breath, carrying the distant chatter of birds, the rustle of leaves, the faintest hint of unseen prey. A deep, instinctual longing stirred within it, a pull toward the dense undergrowth. The first few days were a blur of cautious exploration. Shadow mapped out its new territory, scent marking logs and rocks, testing the soft give of the mossy ground. It discovered a stream, clear and cold, and the sheer delight of scooping water with its tongue after weeks of drinking from a bowl. It found a sun-drenched ledge perfect for napping and a dense thicket of ferns that offered impenetrable cover. The humans here, the sanctuary staff, were different too. They moved with a quiet efficiency, their voices low and soothing, leaving food at designated spots without intruding. They were giants still, but giants who understood the delicate dance of space and trust. The memory of the snare, the searing pain, the desperate, lonely nights. These brutal flashbacks still came, sharp and unwelcome, but they faded faster here, replaced by the soothing hum of the cicadas and the warmth of the sun on its fur. On the day Liam came to say goodbye, Shadow felt a familiar tightening in his chest, a strange mix of contentment and a nascent ache of absence. He sat quietly, his familiar scent washing over it, reassuring yet tinged with a new sadness. Shadow watched him, its keen eyes tracing the lines of his face, the way his fingers gently stroked the rough bark of a nearby tree. This man who had brought it back from the brink, who had offered unwavering comfort and patience, was leaving. A deep instinctive urge prompted Shadow to move closer. It felt the smooth, cool weight of a small, polished riverstone in its mouth, a forgotten trinket it had found by the stream, a small, perfect thing. With a soft purr, Shadow nudged its head against Liam's hand, then gently, carefully deposited the stone into his palm. It was a silent gesture, a language understood beyond words, a small, tangible piece of its wild heart offered as a thank you. As Liam's fingers closed around the stone, Shadow felt a deep, warm contentment blossom within it. This wasn't the end, but a new beginning, a quiet promise of a connection that, even across the divide of species and sanctuary walls, would forever remain unbroken. It was a place to belong, finally, truly in its own way. The click of the shutter was a memory now, a sound that once defined Liam's world, a heartbeat in every frame. Now it was the quiet rustle of leaves, the distant call of a hawk, and the soft pad of his own feet on the earth that filled his days. Retired, his hands, once accustomed to the intricate mechanics of a camera, now found solace in the simple act of holding a warm mug of coffee as he watched. He often revisited the sanctuary, not as a photographer seeking the perfect shot, but as a silent observer, a ghost in the landscape, always drawn to the Bobcat enclosure. He watched Shadow, strong and majestic, from afar, a creature reclaimed by the wild, yet forever etched into the quiet chambers of Liam's own heart. In his pocket always was a small, worn frame, holding a photograph of the frail kitten he'd found, a tiny, terrified bundle of matted fur and sharp angles. It was a constant, tangible reminder of the life he'd saved and the profound, unspoken bond they shared. The experience had carved new pathways in his soul, teaching him that sometimes the greatest adventures weren't found through a camera lens, chasing fleeting moments, but through an act of selfless love, proving that even a single quiet act of kindness could echo through eternity, transforming not just a life, but a very soul. The first sensation was a crushing weight, then a jolt that sent pain lancing through every part of his tiny frame. He remembered the smell of metal and a dizzying darkness, punctuated by the blinding flash of light. Fear, a cold, sharp claw, gripped him. His small body, already aching from hunger and a deep, throbbing soreness in his leg, trembled uncontrollably. Giant forms moved around him, their voices a low rumble, their shadows immense and terrifying. He tried to hiss, a pathetic squeak escaping his throat, but his strength was gone. He was lifted, and the world spun. He remembered the sharp prick, a sudden sting followed by a wave of drowsiness that pulled him into a dark, heavy sleep. Awakening was slow, a gradual ascent from a place of profound darkness. The first thing he registered was warmth, not the biting cold of the exposed earth, nor the damp chill of a hidden den, but a soft, enveloping warmth that seeped into his bones, easing the persistent ache. He blinked, his cloudy eyes slowly focusing on a blurred world. The giants were still there, but their movements were softer now, their voices a gentle murmur. One giant had a peculiar smell, earthy, comforting. This giant, Liam, would later bring him a shallow dish. He remembered the metallic tang of the water, cool and clean after days of thirst. The food, a soft, warm mash, tasted like nothing he had ever known, a sweet relief against the gnawing emptiness in his belly. Each swallow was a victory, each lick a step away from the desolate past. Trust wasn't a concept he understood, but a feeling that slowly, imperceptibly, began to blossom within him. It was in the gentle strokes against his fur, the steady rhythm of a beating heart pressed against him when he was held. The sharp needle still brought a jolt of fear, but it was followed by the warmth of a blanket, the sweet taste of something that dulled the pain, and the soothing hum of the giant's voice. His injured leg, once a source of searing agony, was now a dull throb, meticulously cleaned and rebandaged each day. He learned to associate the sight of the giant, Liam, with the cessation of discomfort, the arrival of food, and a pervasive, quiet safety. The world, once a hostile, unpredictable place, was slowly, miraculously becoming a sanctuary. He even began to tolerate the presence of other giants, though Liam remained his primary source of comfort. The fear didn't vanish entirely, but it receded, replaced by a cautious acceptance, a recognition of kindness. Liam thought about the small framed photo in his pocket, a window to a past that had irrevocably shaped his present. He remembered the late nights, the endless worry, the quiet victories. He remembered the day's shadow, a sleek, powerful creature now, had finally been released into the vast, protected acres of the sanctuary. It had been bittersweet, a relinquishment of ownership for a greater good. He hadn't sought recognition, only the knowledge that he had played a part. As he turned to leave, a young intern from the sanctuary approached him, a wide smile on her face, a thick envelope in her hand. "Mr. Davies," she began, "this just came for you from our wildlife monitoring team." Liam opened it slowly, his brow furrowing in curiosity. Inside, nestled among some official-looking documents, was a thermal image. It was blurry, indistinct, but unmistakable. He saw the familiar compact form of a bobcat, and beside it, another, slightly smaller shape. And then 3 tiny glowing bundles huddled close, shadow with a mate and cubs, a new generation, a legacy. His intervention, a single act of kindness, had not only saved one life, but had reverberated through the wild heart of nature, ensuring a thriving future. If this video touched your heart, I'd love to hear from you. Just drop a simple comment. Maybe type 1 if you'd welcome more story like this, or 0 if you just want to say you were here, or sharing your thoughts about the video. We'll see you on the next video.